There was at least one person. Second. Fine. Alright. Anyone? You got one submission? It would be great. And we did. I heard it got quite pretty cool based off track. That one track. I don't think I couldn't go for it. The Wi-Fi situation is seems to be off. Uh, well, I'm on. Uh, I'm on. I'm able to get online. That's the reason why. Yeah. Okay, there you are. I was about to have to spell you. Sorry, the lighting situation here is weird because the guy that wants space is not here today. But there's 3 drinks that are fine. Oh. Like you said, did you email it to me or did you Slack? Message me on Discord. Yeah, I see our DMs. I am attached. Are you securely attached? I mean, we've got Eva wearing. Okay. Okay. We're the deal with the glass. Oh. The lighting in the bathroom way. Yeah. Okay. Oh, got one. Your kids. Oh. Okay. And after, so we'll get started. Walk everyone through segment 3 of EDM. I'll put the live through. Do my class fade out. Do you think it pervades everything in my life? All right. So last week we both got introduced to Ableton. We also we got introduced to using MIDI to make drum beats and bass lines and start putting together like sort of a drop that actually sounds like a song. And today we'll go deeper on that through the genre of techno. But first I wanted to, we'll listen to some people's submissions here, but I wanted to hear if anything interesting came up for folks while they were making music this past few ways. I know a lot of us were doing Halloween stuff, but what came up for y'all, if anything? You mentioned something about bass.
Yeah, I was listening to my own bass, and then I was listening to the bass of my favorite EDM track. And the bass of my favorite EDM tracks was like, boom, like filling my entire soundscape. And then mine felt like relatively weak in comparison. And I was playing with layering and like putting it across the audio field. Large and rich and complex.
Mm-hmm. Check. All right, Michael, is that better on the volume? I switched to a different input. It's basically redlining now, so hopefully that's enough. But all right, so weak bass. What gives? So it could be a couple things. Part of it could be mastering, like literally it could just be your volume of your bass was not as high relative to the rest of your sounds as compared to some of these professional mixes. It could be that your bass sound was dominated by the sub, like the very low frequencies, a lot of what makes a bass sound loud and present is like more mid-range or even, you know, high frequencies. So adding in some higher layers can help with that. I think in your message you mentioned also adding some stereo width kind of helped the bass stand out a little bit more. So yeah, that can also help. Usually you want your mix to sound good in mono, so you want like a really strong, consistent tone right in the middle of the stereo field, and then you can have some like more mid-range and high-range layers to fill out the stereo spectrum. You know, it can also be a trade-off, right? Like if there's a lot of other elements at play, then the bass ends up being more subdued just because it can't take up as much space in the mix. And I think you find that too. I think that's like a general sort of approach that a lot of EDM takes compared to pop. Like it'll have fewer elements, but they'll all be louder. So like, you know, compared to the where this came up for me recently was in my Halloween set. I played this one Lady Gaga song, which, you know, has a lot of cool layers and counter melodies and stuff, and you know, you can dance to it, sure. But then the remix of it that I had came on, and it was pretty much just like kick drum, bass, and her voice, and that just gives you so much more headroom to make all the individual elements louder and more present. And you know, it's like, you know, stupider music in the sense that there's less, you know, interweaving complexity, but you know, you get more of that like powerful bass, intense physical feeling from all the extra like air you're pushing in that frequency. So yeah, a few different reasons for that. I'd have to look at your mix specifically to further diagnose your ailment. But is the song that you're playing for us today the one that you were working on that had this issue?
Yeah, and
okay.
I think I fixed some parts of the problem, but I still didn't get it to the point where it sounds like the professional bass that I was going for.
Okay. Well,
I think your tip on the subs might be helpful.
Yeah, because I saw you were mixing on your headphones, and that can be a really common problem with trying to mix bass on headphones. Usually the problem is you turn up the bass too much, but because so lower frequencies tend to be more. They tend to take up more headroom if you're not careful. So you'll turn up the bass, and then the sub frequencies will get the most boost from that. So then it'll kind of sound muddy and sort of swamped because again, those low frequencies are dominating. The same thing happens when you like apply saturation to a signal. It tends to boost the fundamental, the lowest frequency sound the most. So you often have to compensate by like rolling off the low end a little bit after applying saturation. So yeah, maybe when I listen to your demo, I'll be able to pinpoint which of those issues it might be. But yeah, bass can be tricky, and we'll talk about how to get. I noticed also you said you added more side chaining, and that helped a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, getting that clarity can often also make something sound louder, just because your ears can pick it up more, and it's less muddy. I like to say we hear things as we are, not as they are. And so there's all these little psychoacoustic tricks that can make sounds jump out at you more, which we'll explore throughout this course. Anything else? Anyone else? Did y'all have trouble programming the bass or programming the drums and bass in MIDI? Were you able to like add in some of your loops from other sample packs, or like bring in other sounds?
I was struggling with figuring out how to get one long drawn out bass sound and turn it into like a quarter note, or just get it to go past multiple measures. Yeah.
Like you want to just hold down a note and have it
just
persist.
One drawn out, yeah, for a little while, and it kept like repeating on the kick. So I was struggling with figuring out how to best do that, how to connect them.
Okay.
In the MIDI, so because I was trying to zoom out, but it wouldn't let me go further.
Okay. But if you had the side chaining set up, then the bass would pump in and out, right?
That might be it too.
Which is usually something a sound that you want. But I'll set up like a little demo of what I think you're doing, and before I get into the main content of the lesson, maybe we can figure out what's going on there.
I was struggling with this too. I realized for me it was just lowering my mouse to the right side of the note and then like dragging it out,
Okay.
which I didn't realize I could do until today.
Gotcha. Huh.
If you go to the MIDI display, you can just like drag it. Yeah.
Further than the length section.
Then measure. Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, maybe I'll touch on what are called Reese basses, because that's a common bass sound you might use you would hold out for a long period of time. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, let's play some people's homework and see what y'all cooked up. Cool. So first submission comes from Tyler. Here we go.
There are many things in my life that I am attached to. I am attached to being seen as good. I am attached to sacrificing my current well-being for a hypothetical future reward. I am attached to the fiction of a perfect moral system that makes all my decisions for me. I am attached. I am attached. I am attached. I am attached, touched, 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 I am attached. And I'm gonna let it go, 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 go.
All right. Very nice. Hello. Cool. Yeah, love the arrangement. This sounds like a song Toshin would make. Is this a sample? Did you make this sample in like 11 Labs or something?
Exactly. It took me 3 hours to try to figure out how to get a Japanese accent.
Okay.
Kind of I was going through all these like different AI text-to-speech things, and then 11 Labs is the one where you could get like so many different variations, and you could even tell it in brackets, like scream this, or say this distressed, or something like that.
Nice.
So it's really flexible that way.
Okay. Yeah. Check out 11 Labs if y'all want, voices to make samples from, which was something I asked y'all to do for the homework this time, which we can use in our track for today. But very creative. Love it. Nice arrangement. Good. You used a very classic sort of bass line of just like, root note and then going up a half step and then going up a whole step. That's in terms of modes, which are different kinds of scales, it's a Phrygian mode. That can sound really good for kind of keeping things energetic and moving and unresolved so that there's always this sort of like unstable forward motion to it. You hear this kind of bass line a lot in tech house too. So that was very nice. Your bass line did sound pretty powerful. I'm guessing that the reason it sounds weaker is mainly the mastering, because I can see the volume, the amplitude of your overall mix kind of keeps going up and up and up, and usually mastered tracks are like just one thick rectangle of EDM power. But yeah, I think you chose, good notes, and you did have a couple layers in there. I might have to look at your Ableton file to get more surgical. But yeah, overall sounded good to me. Let's see what's something, and it goes hard. Yeah. I mean, I think this could definitely. I think Tasha would play this in one of his meta dance parties. Cool. All right. Let's hear what Storm has for us. That last bit was from Millennium. Nice. Okay. This is pretty spooky, so perfect for Halloween. The putting the clap on the every other eighth note is a fine creative choice. Usually you would put it on the 2 and the 4, but like right in here. But could also work as a sort of like how the open hi-hat functions. And I liked too what you had going here in the last bit, but I think your loop maybe wasn't quite warped to the same tempo as your 808 sound. You can listen again real quick. So I think too my sound card just did something weird, but in any case, I think we just needed to probably warp the loop so it matches the tempo better. But like what you had there arrangement wise would have been perfect for an intro. Kind of reminded me of like a G6. But props for submitting a submission this time. Cool. Let's check out weird kicks. Hopefully my sound card is not freaking out. Actually, let me try something real quick. Let me change this to this. And let me pause and go with ads. All right, here we go. All right, nice. Very, very schizo, but in the best way. Hey, what's up? Let's see, what to say. Yeah, really love that super juicy kick sample that came in around here. And yeah, we had some decent drum programming here. With you brought in the hi-hats at an appropriate time to create a build-in energy. Sounds good. And then, your choice of like counter melody also worked pretty well. It felt like it was in the right tempo, and none of the elements clashed in terms of what key they were in. So good sensitivity there, and I think it definitely lived up to its name of weird kicks. So, props. All right. Well, thank you to the people that submitted homework. Looking forward to hearing more submissions from y'all on Wednesday, hopefully. So, all right, let's get into today's topic. So we've gotten introduced to Ableton. We've programmed MIDI drum and bass patterns. So today we're going to try to build an entire drop using a vocal sample of your choosing. If you had a chance to find one online that you liked, now's the time to bust it out. I realize the internet is down, so we may just need to record ourselves saying something, but I do want to stress that it is perfectly fine to record yourself shouting out catchphrases or even singing. I'll show you all some techniques for how you can reshape your sound so it doesn't just sound like you, but it sounds like a cool EDM sample. In fact, I'll try to sample myself here for my own demonstration here as well. So, and this time we'll also use the template that I suggested, where we have a drums group, bass group, foreground, and background elements. So, but I'm gonna drastically simplify my template here. Just put in a single audio track into each one. Get this set up. And we'll also go a little bit deeper into Vital today. Nothing too crazy, just enough to make some really simple bass sounds that we can use. Cool, put this in the drums group. Okay. All right, so for techno, we have a few different choices for tempo. I'm a big fan of 150. Actually, before I show this, let me motivate our lesson by showing you the one viral video I've had on Instagram so far from my music, and just to show you how little music it can take to make a piece of content that people really respond to. Let's see. So Hyrax Haven. Do y'all know what a Hyrax is?
Yeah.
Yes. So I made a remix of Hyrax sound. Let's see. Let me scroll back.
It's like this animal.
Yeah, it's this tiny little desert rodent. He makes this crazy screaming sound. Let me see where the one. So I made this video. It's like a minute long. I sent it to like half a dozen Hyrax influencers, which is a real thing. And yeah, let me see if I can find it. And this guy was like, "Oh, that sounds cool. Let me repost it." And that's how I got 660 something thousand views. Let's see, where is that thing?
Still a lot of Hyrax.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, maybe it's this guy's special interest.
I haven't found my way into this part of the Instagram.
Hold on. Maybe I can just find it directly. Here we go. Okay. All right, so we'll cover some of the techniques I used to make my breakout hit. Cool. And that's a song I can show you all without getting copyright struck, because it's my song. All right, so with techno, one thing you can get away with is putting a lot of distortion on your kick drum. So let's find any old kick drum. I'll build it from the cymatic samples. Let me turn this down a little bit. Let's get a house kick though. Not that. Not that. Okay, that's a pretty good one. All right, so I have an audio track here in my drums group. I can call this kick. And we're actually gonna do a little pre-processing, and I'm gonna show you like some of the optimizations that go into getting a really loud, tight, well-engineered sound here. So we'll bring in our G house kick, and we can see that it extends, probably about 3/16 notes. We're going to want to ultimately trim it down to 1/8 note. But first, let's put some saturation on it. So grab yourself a saturator effect. Just the default one's fine. And So, if I turn it off, by default, the kick drum sounds like this. When I turn on the saturator, so it adds like a lot of higher level harmonics in it, and also makes the sound kind of grittier, harder, etc. You've got a few different curves here if you want to really go crazy. So if you do like the hard curve, you get this kind of sound. And there's genres like gabber where you do want that super distorted kick, but we just want like a little bit of grit to kind of give it that hard techno edge. Maybe something like that. And I'm going to render this so we have the audio sample with the effect applied to it available to us. So you can just right click on the track and say freeze track. Well, bounce track in place is what we want in Ableton 12. If you're on Ableton 11, you have to freeze the track and then print it. But bounce track in place is what we want. And so now you can see, oh, damn, the waveform just got a lot squarer and intense. And that's what I think I was talking about, like what it's clipping the other day. This is what clipping looks like when taken to the extreme. You get this like really intense square-shaped sound. And so we're going to take that, and we only want it to last for 1/8 note. So
why would you render it like that as opposed to just leave the saturator on it?
Yeah, so I'm doing that so that I can shorten the sample, because we're going to then use the sample in a simpler. Mm-hmm. We're going to use it as a sample in and of itself. What's up?
How do you manage to get the thing on the top to loop back and forth? This is like a keyboard shortcut.
This thing?
Yeah.
So if you select an area of time that you want and you press Control L, you can loop that segment. So that's what we want. When Hyrax coin, LOL. All right, so after having rendered it, if I turn the grid size to 1/8, you can see that it extends kind of far past that. But basically, we just want to look. We want the kick's going to be 4 on the floor, but we want to leave some space for our sub bass to come in. So we only want the kick to last for about 1/8 note here, and that way our bass can come in and fill in some of the gaps here. And then I haven't showed this yet, but you can also fade out a clip here by clicking this upper right corner and doing this. So now we'll get a kind of a cleaner kick drum sound that kind of tails off right when we want it to, and then the bass will kind of come in, and this will help keep the kick and the sub bass kind of glued together and both have enough space to do their thing. Let's see. What is the glued together? Like they're cooperating, like the kick flows naturally into the bass, like they sound like a unified power engine of energy, of motivation. What does the bounce track in place do again? That renders whatever, it takes whatever audio and effects are on the track and it renders it as a unified audio file. So you can see now I don't have any like the saturator and the EQ and the utility, those all disappeared. Now I just have this rendered audio clip that has all the effects applied. And this can be a way to save CPU. It can be a way to kind of collect and gather your work so you can continue processing the sample further. In other ways, like, I wasn't able to fade out the end of the clip until I did that bounce in place bit. So
what is, like, when you bounce track in place, it separates into like a tail for me at least? Like, it has like a head and a tail now?
Oh, like it created two clips that are right next to each other?
Right.
Yeah, and that'll happen too when we get into doing a technique called reverse reverb. If you just select those two pieces and then hit, let's see,
Command J.
Yeah, Command J. So if I join these together and I say consolidate, then that'll glue them back together, and then you can fade out the tail here like I did. So just to illustrate what that sounds like, I went from this to this. So it still has that huge punch, but I don't have a big like tail to the sound that kind of sounds like a note. So this will be like, I'm going to let the bass fill that part in, and I just have this nice punchy, intense kick drum sound that I can use. And we're still hitting at -9 dB, which is perfect, roughly. Cool. So now that we have our kick drum sample, we can create a new MIDI track if we want. And I'm going to show you all another instrument too that you can use for organizing your drum sounds. It's called the drum rack, and especially if you have Ableton Live Lite, the drum rack lets you put all your drum sounds on one channel so you can save tracks. But grab yourself the drum rack instrument, and we're going to put it in a new MIDI track, and then I can just click and drag this sample that we made into the drum rack, and now I can just play it here.
Any kit would work, or
For the saturation technique.
I think in the drum rack there's like a bunch of different kits, so just any kit.
There should be one that's just called drum rack, but there are a bunch of preset kits that come with Ableton that are implemented as drum racks, and you should definitely try them out. Like there's a lot of inspiring kits in there that already have a bunch of sounds that work well together. So that can be another way to kind of speed up your workflow. So and I'll just call this drums, lowercase. So now that we have that, we can create a new MIDI clip. And you'll see instead of there being like a long piano roll with like every note in the piano, we just have a single line right now for the one sample that we have on there. So that makes things, a lot easier to deal with visually. So I'll just make a little 4 on the floor pattern. Boop, 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 boop. Now we don't need this anymore. And then, so we're going to make our drop 32 measures long. That's a pretty standard amount of time for a drop to take place. What's up?
So when you do that, so you bounce the track, and then to create like the final rendered sound, and then you dragged it into your drum rack, and so your drum rack just like saves that track. You don't need to store it anywhere.
Yeah, I can. Let's see. I should be able to find the sample. The sample should exist somewhere. Somewhere. I mean, another thing you can do is you can take this sample and drag it into, let's say, you can right-click on it and you should be able to save it. You can right-click and say Show in Browser. You can see it's here in the samples process directory of your current project. Right. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So you should be able to find everything. Ableton does a good job of remembering stuff like that for you.
For some reason, I can't get the sound to play on the MIDI track.
You have a drum rack in your drum rack.
Oh. I see that. Okay, so I drag this.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe you select
32 measures.
Yeah, Ableton lets you do some crazy stuff with nesting and grouping.
And that was originally not in a MIDI spot. It was it was not in a MIDI track. The original sound that you modified.
Yeah, I took a one-shot audio sample, put it on an audio track, processed it the way I wanted, and then I brought it into the drum rack in MIDI.
I just checked
What's up?
what I'm doing. It's just I brought that in,
Yeah.
and then to get the saturator, I just
Place it there, right? And then
I just
whatever you do.
drop it in here,
Mm-hmm.
and then
He added.
Crank up the drive on it.
So he added
So-
search for saturator.
Oh yeah. I should have mentioned the way I got the distortion effect on the saturator was I turned up the drive knob. Yeah.
Is drive just volume? Or what is that? Or intensity?
Drive it's not just volume. It's sort of like the amount of, it kind of is volume. It's like the amount of signal you're sending into the circuit that does the distortion. You can see the waveform gets more close to square as I crank the drive. I mean, honestly, it is actually kind of similar to just turning up the gain. Like if I bring in this sample, if I turn up the gain here, right, and then I can render it. Actually, well, it doesn't work here because Ableton actually can remember it. It uses more bits of information to encode the sound, so it can remember what it was like before you clipped the hell out of it. Actually, I think if I do bounce in place, it will. Yeah. So now you can see what the clipping just completely decimated it.
I don't know if my sound audio engine is flapping out, but it like sounds really thin and weird.
Sounds thin and weird.
It has like no thump to it whatsoever.
This sounds quite funny. I mean, you really you distorted it quite significantly, but it doesn't seem. Okay, and you have the drive turn way up, so
Yeah.
it's doing everything I expected.
Okay. But it sounds very different from your review lab, right?
Well,
That's
you're
really sample.
pushing it harder. You're using the hard curve.
Okay.
You may have brought in a different sample than I used.
Okay.
It's not gonna, a final sound is like the original sound plus the effect, and it can, so there's at least two different variables in there. Okay, but now that we have our 4 on the floor pattern, and we want to make it, a 32 bar drop, if I'm starting here on 5, then 32 bars would be, 37? So I'm just gonna duplicate this, and actually, maybe you can see that Ableton helpfully kind of color codes the different segments. It looks like these are 16 bars each. So I'm actually going to slide it over so I have the color coding working in my favor.
How did you? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like I guess when you were saying homework assignments to 32 bars, so the top like measuring
Up here, right?
That's always going to be on the same. Ratio or something like that. Like it's always going to be 32.
Well, these are always measures,
Okay.
right? The amount of time down here will change. Like if I really lower the tempo, then a measure will take more time to play out.
Yep.
But
that's always that number of times always measures, and like sometimes when you zoom in, zooming in, I say like 1.2 or 1.3.
Oh yeah, so these are further subdivisions of a measure. So the first decimal place is quarter notes, and then the second subdivision is these are eighth notes. I think that's as high resolution as the numbers go in Ableton system.
Thank you.
But the whole numbers are measures, yeah. So another thing you can do too is you can add these markers, like you right click up here on the timeline, and you can add a locator. So why did it stop? Sorry, 1 second, y'all. Oh wait, connect to a wireless display. Rude. All right, we're back. We are back. Okay. Okay. So, at this halfway point, I'm gonna put a halfway. I'm gonna call it halfway, and then I'll put a marker here that says like end drop. And I'll put a locator here that says start, drop. And this just helps keep me organized because, every eight measures, I'm going to want to do a little turnaround. Every 16 measures, I'm going to want to do like kind of a bigger turnaround to, reset the energy and keep things flowing and give people a slight chance to rest. But now I'm starting to kind of scope out my full drop, even though I'm going to later go in and change up some of these kick drum patterns. But at least I now have the sort of high level overview of my track. And I think this, I mean, for me, this is like, some people like to, start with 8 bars and refine that a million times over until they get it sounding just like they want and then build from there. I like to try to build as much of the track as possible and then refine top down from there. But y'all will find your own process as you keep making tracks. Cool, so we got our hard techno kick drum sound. Now let's add some sub bass to go with that. So let's create a new MIDI track. And now that y'all are all Vital experts and know how to load up Vital, you can put Vital on that MIDI track. And we're going to do some real simple programming here. So the default sound in Vital is the saw wave. It sounds, very bright and buzzy. But for techno, we want a more, or we want a sound that doesn't have so much high end in it. We want like kind of a more just, sub kind of sound. So the simplest sound the simplest waveform you can do for that is called a sine wave. If we click on this init and we go into the factory bank and we select basic shapes, now we can scroll through various, basic waveform shapes. Sorry, I heard my Discord. What did you end up doing with the kick? It's an 8th note. Did you repeat it to be on every beat? Okay, so the kick drum lasts for 1/8 note, but it's actually, the pattern is quarter notes, so 4 on the floor pattern. And again, the reason we make the sample only last 1/8 note is so we have more space afterwards for the bass to kind of fill in. So we'll get this kick bass, kick bass, kick bass, kick bass sort of sound. Cool. So back to our sub here. So the simplest possible sound is a sine wave. It's literally just a single frequency. Like you almost can't even hear it. On many sound systems you wouldn't be able to hear it because you don't have any sub. But it has this very pure kind of sound to it. If you need a little, but sometimes that can be so subdued that you need a little bit of extra high frequencies to give it a little bit of presence. And so there's this nice waveform that's one past the sine, which is sort of like a sine plus. It's got the 3rd and the 5th harmonics in it, which you can see here, right? The basic sine wave is literally just one frequency, and the sort of sine plus has the 3rd and the 5th harmonic to fill in some extra space under the curve. So that's why you can hear it more easily. We don't need to get too deep into that, but just that's why this sine wave is kind of quiet sounding, but this sine plus wave is has a little bit more presence. And you can take this to the logical extreme too with the square wave, which is what if you just completely filled that in. But we probably won't use that here. So just select this kind of sound, and then we'll program our bass pattern here. So select one measure of time, and let's see, this low note, we're going to go with an F0. F0 is a note that sounds really good on a lot of different sound systems. So you'll hear a lot of EDM songs written in the key of F because the root key of the song is so powerful on subs. And there's a nice little chart you can look at to give you some intuition for what some good bass notes to choose are. So let's see, mercurial tone sub notes. I think this is the chart I want. Subnote frequency chart. Yeah, here we go. Perfect notes for sub bass. I'll post this into the Discord. This is one off from Ableton. So where this chart says F1 is this note that I'm playing here. In Ableton, it's F0. So something to keep in mind. But basically, like these notes here are your sweet spot for sub, and you can go as low as like B flat, as high as A, till it starts either getting really sort of tinny and weak in the high end, or sort of flabby and indecipherable in the low end. But if you stick to this like B flat to A octave for your lowest note in your song, then you'll generally be good to go. So I'm going with this F0.
Did you say that again? B flat to A octave?
Yeah, if you see this chart, like, so in Ableton it would be B flat -1, I think.
Okay, I see.
Oops. Sorry, my sound is messing up again. 1 second.
And what's that chart called?
I pasted it into the Discord, so you should be able to see it there. Though the internet is actually off here. Sorry. Okay, hold on. I need to reset my audio engine. There we go. Okay, so we'll go with this kind of like galloping pattern of 1/8 note followed by 2/16. Dun 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 dun. Very, very common. If we loop that, we get something like this. And it's actually very quiet and difficult to hear because if we look at the way this volume envelope is set up, oops, sorry, I got the wrong waveform on. The sound is basically playing at full volume the whole time. There's no what's called a transient to it. So there's nothing for the ear to pick up on whenever the note resets. It's just like doo. So we can fix that by taking the corner of our envelope here in Vital and just bringing it down a little bit. So this gives it a little bit of attack at the beginning. And we may need to turn it up anyways, but let's hear. Like now you can hear it's got a little bit of da-da-da-da-da-da. And we'll emphasize that a little bit further with what's called a pitch envelope. So let's say you pluck a bass note, you're putting a lot of energy into it at the beginning, and that can be enough to actually change the pitch that the string is oscillating at before it settles into its steady state. And it also helps the note kind of stick out a little bit in the listener's ear. So, this isn't really a sound design class, but just showing y'all a couple basic things so that y'all can edit presets the way you like. But we'll take this other N2 here, and we're going to put that on the pitch of the oscillator. And then we're going to take this corner here and we're going to drag it like all the way to the bottom and make it real short. So you get this kind of lasery sound. Even that's probably a little too long. Yeah, that's better. So you can hear it gives it this like punchy attack at the beginning. So like before I added it, right? And then after I add it, and that bit of knock at the beginning helps the sub kind of cut through the mix, and you'll hear it relative to the kick a lot better. All right, so now we're starting to get into like some brutal techno territory. We haven't even wired up the side chain yet, so I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader while I run to the restroom real quick. But you should put a compressor effect on your bass group, and then change the source, or open up the extra controls here, and set the source to be since we're using this drum rack, we have to first set the source to drums, and then pick the specific sample we want to trigger off of. So in this case, bounce kick. And one other little detail that I didn't mention last class is I like to use the pre-effects signal routing. The reason being will become apparent when we do when we create our first little turnaround section to keep the groove going. So set your sidechain compression up real quick. I'll be right back. What's up?
Bring up the vital instrument again to tweak it.
How do you say that again?
So I'll bring up the vital specifically for this instrument. Like how do I bring it up to tweak it? So you click here, and then you click the little orange icon.
You put the compressor on the MIDI rather than the bass group.
I have this bass group, so I want all of my basses to get the side chaining treatment. If I add some other wobbles or whatever, otherwise I would have to put it on like every single channel here. Actually, let me call this one sub. So let's see, bring down the threshold. Cool. All right, what else we got here? And there's one other sound design thing to show y'all. Oh, sorry. Sorry. One other sound design thing. So the sub kind of sounds like a bit like a machine gun right now. Dun 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 dun. It's like very, all the notes are the same volume. So we should add some velocity sensitivity to the sub, so we can make the last note a little bit quieter, so it'll give more groove. There'll be a slight pullback after every beat, which will make the next kick drum hit sound louder. Because humans, we really hear sounds next to each other in a comparative sort of way, more so than absolute. So if you have a slightly quieter sound next to a louder sound, it'll make the louder sound even louder. So we want to get that kind of effect going. How do I bring my Vital thing into Ableton? Okay, so you don't want to open Vital in standalone mode. Like, you can't just run Vital outside of a DAW. You should have Vital, if you followed the installation instructions from last time correctly, you should have Vital in your plugins section, Corey. If you're missing that, then you need to go to Options, Settings, and then Plugins, and you need to turn on all these VST folders and then hit Rescan. All right, so let's make our sub-bass velocity sensitive. So open up Vital, and there's this velocity modulator down here. You can just take that and put it on the level of the sub. So now when you play a note with higher velocity, the level of the oscillator will go up and it will sound louder. So if we go into here, we'll make the first two notes of each group full volume, and then the fourth one will be, full velocity, and then the fourth one will be, the third note in each group of 4/16 notes. Well, 1/8 and 2/16. It'll be a little bit quieter. So we take that and we duplicate it a few times. And so now we get kind of a more groovy sort of sound. You can hear how that fourth one now is a little bit quieter. Before it was like this. We'll just bring it down a little bit.
Sorry, so those are, it's a fourth followed by 2 eighths, right?
It's an eighth note followed by 2 16th notes.
And how did you add the eighth note? Did you switch it to eighths, add it, and then switch back to 16ths, or is it already done?
You can do it like this. I think I probably added a 16th and then grabbed it and dragged it over. Doop doop doop. Doom da da doom da da doom da da doom. Oh, sorry. One last pro move is we want to turn the phase. We want to turn the phase randomization down to 0 for this. What phase randomization is it will start playing back this waveform at different points in it, a random point every time. And usually that's good for leads or pads or other kind of sounds like that because you get a more organic sort of sound. But for bass, we want it to be very consistent and we want to hear the same thing every time because that's like the foundational rock of our track. So bringing down the phase randomization can keep your bass sound more consistent, and that sets you up for success with your whole mix. So the four things we did in Vital were we turned down the decay, we turned down the sustain on our volume envelope 1. We added this pitch envelope to the pitch here. We added the velocity sensitivity to the level, and then we turned the phase randomization down to 0. And you can save that sound here, call it like sub 001. I probably already called something sub 001, so let me add a few more zeros. So now you can just bring this sound up anytime you want a basic sub. I clicked this little icon here. So yeah, so now we get this. All right, want to bring this down even more.
So you put the compressor, the source of the compressor modulation is the kick, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're putting that on the Vital.
Yeah, I have this bass group. So, and the Vital MIDI track lives inside that bass group, and I put the sidechain compressor on the bass group rather than the Vital channel, because that way when I add more basses to this track, those will also get the same sidechaining treatment, and I won't have to duplicate that a bunch of times. I'll do something similar for the background here as well, because the background elements, I also want the kick sidechain to cut through all of that. Your Vital still has an empty library. Are there any particular from the link that I should download? Yeah, I still don't know why some people's copies of Vital have no presets in them.
I still have to take
Did you ever figure that out, Anuj?
No, I looked around and I was very confused. I think I might have to just like get it up and start over.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I think it might be is if you didn't log in to your Vital account, it couldn't give you the starting presets. But you could try finding, you could go to the preset share link I linked above. That has a bunch of free ones. Let's see. And also Vital itself has like a $5 or $10 or $15 a month plan that gives you access to more presets. So that's another option if you're okay spending a few bucks.
If I could ask you, could you
What's
say
up?
the 4 vital things again? There was like drop the sustain on.
Yeah. So they were on envelope 1. This is the volume envelope by default.
Okay.
I lowered the sustain and the decay, but so I think it started off somewhere like up here, but I put it here.
What is sustain?
Sustain this is the level that if you were to hold the note down, this is the level that it will drop to. So when the sustain is all the way up, it'll stay at full volume as long as you're holding down the note. If you bring the sustain to half, then when you press the note, it decays down to the volume level where it will sustain. And then if you have the sustain all the way, like if you were making an 808, you'd put the sustain at 0 because you want it to fully die out at some point.
So if you like slammed a piano note, it would initially make a louder sound, but then like it eventually would settle.
Yeah.
Like that.
Every organic sound eventually runs out of energy to sustain itself. So in the real world, sustain is at 0. But you might, like if you really hit the piano key hard, you might have a very long decay time. 808 sounds like this.
The sustain was like the level at which it like plateaus before it dies, right?
Yeah.
And
It'll stay at that level forever.
forever or
I mean, with it, as long as I'm holding down the note, it'll stay at that sustained pitch, or sorry, that sustained volume. So yeah, for this sound, we want it to always at least have a little bit of volume. Anyway, to further answer your question, Rishi, so I brought the decay and sustain of envelope 1 down. Then I took, for envelope 2, this is the pitch, I dragged it onto the pitch parameter of oscillator 1. And then here I have the sustain at 0 because I want the sound to go back to its original pitch by the end of it. And I just brought the decay down to like 0.24. And then let's see, I put the velocity sensitivity on the level so that if I play the note harder, it will be louder and it will give me some volume control in MIDI. And then the last thing, and then I put the phase randomization at 0. And that's your basic sub. And then if you can also experiment with changing the waveform. But for now we'll keep it with this this sine plus kind of wave. Okay. So I might duplicate this a whole bunch of times. Actually, I want to do just to show you how simple a sort of fill, like a FILL can be. I'm gonna, after let's see, I'm gonna after 2 measures, so I'll make 1 copy of this galloping pattern, and then for this last group of 4, I'm gonna make it a group of 4/16. So I'll get this dun da da dun da da dun da 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 kind of sound, and it's at the end of these first 2 measures. So every power of 2 number of measures, I'm creating a sort of turnaround fill rhythmic gesture to keep the listener's interest, make it not get so repetitive, and keep the person locked in the groove. So you can hear what that kind of sounds like here. Oops, so I got to turn the looping off. So I have that kind of subtle thing. I'll duplicate that.
Can you show it again?
Yeah. I had this originally, right? Just dun da da dun da da dun da da dun da. And I'm going to copy this 4th 16th note here and paste it here. So now I have this group of 4.
it's barely perceptible.
Right. It is very subtle. But it can be enough to, it can be enough that the listener would pick up on it, or it wouldn't, you might just kind of intuitively feel, oh, it was a little bit different there. And also because I'm only 2 measures into the drop, I don't want to do something super, like a big gesture yet. I'm going to save that for like 8 bars in, or 16, like when I really want to do a big turnaround and reset before maybe adding in some new elements. And to show you what I mean here, let's do something similar with the kick drum. So I'm going to take these 2 measures of sub. I'm going to duplicate those as well. And then up here in the kick, one very simple drum fill you can do is just replace this quarter note with 2 eighth notes. So doot doot. That sounds like this. Right? It could be, it's just enough to give the listener something to hang on to without it, while giving us more room later on to create even more variations. In my tracks, I like to do small things first early on in the tracks so that I build up later to doing more complex gestures. And I'm not like giving away all the creative. I'm saving some gas in the tank for later, if that makes sense. Cool. So why don't we add a vocal now, so we can start building our hit track. I'm just gonna group these real quick, since we can kind of think of them as logically related groups of notes. All right, so this is going to be like a foreground element, so this is going to be a lead. I think I can, let's see if I can record my microphone here. Okay, maybe I can't. Let's see. Can I say input config? Okay. All right, let me just grab some random sample from my library. Sacrifice. I don't like that. Is this it? Let's see.
Agnes Harrelson on court.
Okay, I think this one will work. So I'm gonna bring in this audio sample. All right, and somewhere in here he says the idea is to sacrifice the rook. Let's see.
Yeah, the idea is to sacrifice.
There we go. Okay.
That's not the idea. The idea is to sacrifice.
Okay. So I'm gonna snip out just this piece right here.
How'd you snip right there?
Oh, right. Wherever your cursor is, if you press Control E, it creates a split. So I just went in this long sample here and found the specific segment I wanted. And let me drop that in the chat in case y'all want to just use the same sample that I have. Let's see. Show in Explorer. Okay. So if y'all want to use the same sample I'm using here, it's this one. Oh wait, but y'all can't download it. Damn it. Okay. Well, let me put it in here anyway. But one thing you could do is you can arm your track for recording and use the microphone in your laptop to record a catchphrase. So, let's see. Check. I might not be able to do it because I'm also streaming right now. Okay. Yeah. But in theory, you should be able to arm your track for recording and then choose your microphone as the input and then you should be able to record some sample there. I apologize for the technical difficulties here. So maybe, Okay, does anyone feel brave enough to record themselves saying something into their own microphone so that they can use it? Another option for the people on remote is you can go to 11 Labs and create a vocal sample there. Oh wait, I guess some people who are not in the internet situation we have here, y'all can use it. Okay. Figured out by downloading the factory pack here. Okay, cool. For anyone needing presets in Vital, looks like you can get them here.
And what kind of file type, like, isn't it? Or what kind of file type do you need? Any audio file type?
Yeah, MP3, WAV, AIFF, FLAC. Ableton can load them all in. The idea is to sacrifice. Vocal, there might be, I don't think there might be something in the cymatic samples that is someone talking.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think it's right under house.
Okay.
Vocals. Yeah.
Vocal phrases?
Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Deep house. Hands up, then we gonna drop.
Okay, I mean, that could work too.
It's a house party.
Okay, yeah, so any kind of sample you want could work. I'll use...
Hands up, then we gonna drop.
Okay, yeah, let's use that one. Okay, so I'm gonna bring that hands up, then we're gonna drop sample into a new audio track in my foreground group. So rhythmically, the way I want this to go is, let's see, hands up, then we're gonna drop. So I want hands up, then we're gonna drop. So I want that to land on the 4th beat of the measure right before the drop hits. So I think that's roughly here.
Hands up, then we gonna drop. Hands up, then we gonna drop.
That's not, well, okay, this is recorded at 128, so we can actually warp this. So now we can put the sample right here.
Hands up, then we gonna drop.
Cool. So now we've got our vocal sample lined up nicely. Let's pitch it down a little bit so it has that like darker techno kind of feel.
Hands up, then we gonna drop. Hands up, then we gonna drop.
And then I think y'all have this effect too. There's something called a frequency shifter, or I think in Ableton it's just called shifter now. This will let us pitch the sample down even more, but it preserves the relationships between the harmonics. So this is like a better tool than for transposing drums, let's say, than just pitching the shift, because it will preserve the sort of natural timbre of the drum better. So this can be also, and it also just sounds a little bit different than pitching it down. Let's take the shifter, and I'm going to use the frequency shifter mode, and I'm going to bring the coarse frequency down a bit. Sorry, I'm going to use the fine so I can get a little bit more precision.
Hands up, then we gonna drop. Hands up, then we gonna drop.
Right, that sounds pretty diabolical.
Hands up, then we gonna drop.
And if you don't have shifter, then you can get it from you can get one from Kilohertz. So Kilohertz free VSTs. These are the Kilohertz Essentials. So these are some nice plugins to download. Or there's also Melda, free effects. Melda has a lot of good free VSTs. Check these out.
What? Doing a shifter, I lost like the P at the end of the drop. I don't know if you got it.
Hands up, do we call it drop?
I mean, he's kind of saying drop.
Drop.
He's kind of letting it fade out a little bit. Let's see.
Hands up, then we call it drop.
There you're right.
Yeah. So.
The shifter should be included in Ableton.
It might not be, depending on which version you have. It's not strictly necessary for this, but that's why it linked to the kilohertz and the Melda plugin bundle.
Hands up, then we call it drop.
But okay, one thing that that does exist in your copy, and by the way, this is another thing where we can bounce it in place, since we processed it the way we like. So let's use a technique called reverse reverb to create this sort of whooshing in sort of sound that once you hear it, you'll recognize it in like a million different pop songs. This would also be on the final if there were a final for this class. But what we want to do here is we want to take like a little snippet of the beginning. And I'm going to create a new audio track. Maybe I'll take the first eighth note or so and copy that and paste it. So now it sounds like this. Just a little bit at the beginning. And then we're going to put a reverb effect on that, that channel. And we're going to make it 100% wet, so it's just the reverb sound. And we're going to turn up the decay time a lot. 15 seconds. Probably don't need this much time, but just turn it up a lot. All right, so now it rings out. And then let's turn off the low cut and high cut, just so we have the full frequency spectrum of audio to work with. And then we're gonna, once again, we're gonna, once again, damn it, what is it doing? Right click, bounce track in place. And as you noticed in your, I think when you froze your track, it also created like two little clips here. We only really need the second half here. So we'll delete the little snippet. And we only need like one measure of this audio, so we'll drag it over here. We'll snip off the tail. And then what turns this into reverse reverb is we right click here and we say reverse clips. And then we can further enhance this by, well, we don't want to warp it. So make sure you didn't, Ableton sometimes warps your sample when you bounce it in place, so just make sure warp is turned off. But we'll turn up the gain here. And then we'll also fade the sample in. So like similar to how we faded out the kick, we're going to fade in this reverse reverb. So now we get this kind of sound.
Hands up, then we call it drop.
Right? So that's a really common technique for sort of teasing a vocal or creating a sort of premonition that a vocal's coming. It's like, oh, what's this ethereal sound coming from? Oh, it's the vocal. So, and sometimes you have to like kind of line it up. You may need to like let it bleed over into the vocal so it transitions smoothly.
Hands up, then we call it drop.
And actually that's too loud, so.
Hands up, then we call it drop.
So let me just, I know that was a lot of steps, so let me just run that back. So we take a little snippet of our sound that we want, our vocal that we want to do the reverse reverb on.
You said create a copy or that snippet?
I just selected it and then Control C, Control V. Take a little snippet of the beginning, put a reverb on it, turn the dry wet to 100% wet, turn the decay to like, a lot more than you need. I like to turn the input filter off, and then you just bounce that in place. You can delete this little head here. And I only want one measure, so I'm going to drag the whole thing over here and then snip off the part right where the next vocal comes in, and then either select it and hit Shift R to reverse it, or you can right click and select reverse. And then make sure warp is turned off. I don't know why it does that, but I gave it some more gain, and then I faded it in with the same affordance that we used for the kick. And then I turned down the volume a little bit because it can be a lot louder than what we really need here. And also I think I slid it. You can, if you hold down Alt while clicking and sliding your clip, it won't snap to the grid, so you can get a little bit more precise with it. So I want to maybe start it right when the main vocal comes in.
I was trying to match the loudness or not really?
It's kind of to taste, so I just go by my ear, like, the when the vocal comes in, that's the main thing, so it should be louder.
Yeah.
So when you slid at the beginning, are you stretching out at all when you create that overlap between those two?
I'm not stretching the sample. So Ableton, even though I have the sample clipped, Ableton still has all that data in its memory, so I can, if I need it to be longer, that's why we set the decay time on the reverb so high, so it gives us enough material to work with in case we need. Like if I wanted to make a really long, you might have an 8 measure long reverse reverb if you were trying to make some kind of build up sort of sound. Here I just need 1 measure. So.
Why is it
Hands up, do we call it drop?
What's that?
Why is it that when you bounce it in place, at least for me at least, it seems like it really makes it longer, explodes it in terms of length?
Well, okay. In this case, it increases the length of the clip because we have a reverb with a very long decay time on it, 20 seconds.
Right. Oh.
So that's 20 seconds of audio information. Cool. So we have our reverse reverb. We have our hype vocal sample that we're going to then use throughout the rest of our drop. Let's add a little bit of texture to our track. So right now, when the drop hits, it's just kick and bass, right? Nothing really going on in the background. But we can. One really common technique is to have some kind of percussive drum hit right before the drop, and then we'll put a long reverb tail on it, and it will help add the texture there. So right, we've got some drums, we've got some bass, we've got some foreground. So this will go in the background. So let's get a clap. Find some nice clap sample.
I have a question about claps.
What's up?
Claps so prominent? Because when you're playing a drum kit, you have a lot of snares and things like that, and hi-hats and stuff. But
yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, if I put on my evolutionary psychologist hat, I feel like it's because the clap was one of our first drum sounds we ever had access to us. It took a while before we had the technology to stretch a animal skin over tubes, I guess, to create a drum skin. The clap, so I feel like the clap has this sort of natural, organic, come on everybody, let's clap along to the beat, inclusive sort of sound, whereas the snare is a more technological kind of instrument. But the snare does have this really punchy transient at the beginning. So in dubstep, usually you'd use the snare on the 2 and the 4. Sometimes in house music too, but it can sound very military or like a marching kind of instrument, where I feel like the clap has a bit more of that organic, I don't know, inclusivity or accessibility or something. And it also has like a kind of a crispy sound without like a strong pitch at the beginning. The snare drums have a pitch to them. Claps don't really. But you know, experiment. Find what works for you. All right, so let's grab a clap. Okay, I kind of like this one, but I'm going to pitch it down a little bit. But all right, so let's put this on the last eighth note before the drop hits. So I'm going to put it right here. You see how, you know, 16, 16, 2, 63, 16, 4, and then on the eighth note subdivision, I'm gonna pitch it down, or I'm gonna pitch it down a little bit. And actually, I'm gonna shorten it too. I really don't like this. I would definitely use a different clap sample, but you know, for our purposes, maybe I'll shorten it even more. Maybe like here, and maybe I'll pitch it only down a little bit. Okay, so we got that, and now we want to make a big like reverb tail to it. So I'm going to put another reverb here on the clap channel, and I want the initial clap to be very clear. So I'm actually going to start the dry wet at 0, and then I'm going to automate the dry wet to bring in the reverb. So this is our first introduction to automating effect parameters. You can right click on any knob in Ableton, and you can say show automation. You may have seen these orange dotted lines before on accident. That's from this little button up here that turns the automations on and off. So I want the clap to hit. So I want to keep the reverb completely dry, and then as soon as the drop starts, I want to have the reverb come in full, and then, but I don't want it to like gradually come in here. I want it to be really sudden. So I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to click the curve and drag it down. And you can do this, you know, both directions. So this is going to like create sort of an exponential rise in the reverb to create a little bit of space there. And also too, I want like a really long decay here, so I'm going to turn it up to, I don't know, 20 seconds. Right?
Hands up, give me call the drop.
And we'll do it even one better, and we'll add our side chain on the background. So put a compressor on your background elements, change the source to, let's see, call it drums, and then the kick pre-effects. And now we'll get that like kind of sound.
Call the drop.
Actually, I think I want it even more.
Call the drop.
More prominent. I want more decay. I think I want to bring in more highs here. So, yeah. So now we put all that together.
Hands up, give me call the drop.
And so now we actually have some background texture that helps kind of fill in the space, and you know, it's like barbecue sauce. It's a little less dry. As a chess fan, I'm kind of curious. Michael, if you, I'll send out the tutorial video after this, and I use the Levy Rosman clip in that one, so you'll get to see what that sounds like.
Could you go over the automation bit again?
Yep. Okay. So with this clap, I right-clicked on the dry wet knob on the reverb, and I clicked show automation. And that brings up all the different, you know, parameters that have automation on them in Ableton. You can turn it on and off with the A. Letter A does it. or you can click this button up here. And then initially it looked like this. And I clicked and I added a node here at the beginning of the sample. Honestly, I'm going to put it here, like at the 8th note, or sorry, 16th note. And then I inserted another node here and I dragged it up. And then I, with the Alt key, you can bend curves, automation curves. So I bent it all the way down so that I wait until the last minute to turn on the reverb. Another option, honestly, is just to have it jump from 0 to 100% right on the beat. And this sort of thing you can get away with because the kick drum is coming in and it's sort of like blowing away everything, so the listener won't notice that you suddenly turned something on. It's like a fade to white if you are a video editor, or blinking to white. It sort of like clears the person's sensitivity to a sound. So I could just do it like this, but I do kind of like a little bit of it. I mean, this is, you know, something that you would adjust to taste, but. Okay. So then, oh, go ahead.
So is there a way to sidechain on the automation or something? Because now you're sidechaining on the volume side. Like I want the sidechain effect to.
Oh, like you want the reverb to go up and down like this?
Yeah.
You could.
Kick drum comes in.
There may be a way to set that up with max. Another way you could do it is you could. Sorry, I need to re-enable this automation. You could draw a bunch of curves on the quarter note. So I could do something like this, right? I mean, right. So I could implement the side chaining by manually drawing in these automation curves, but it's a lot easier to just have the compressor do it.
Yeah. But the sidechain is just affecting the volume, right? Of the,
yeah.
Of the post, like drive and reverb black.
Yeah, the side chaining here is affecting everything that's in the background group.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily want this on the lead. I might actually, you know, there's definitely situations where I would, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we have a little bit of texture and sort of like this thunderclap to start off the drop. Let's add in a new drum. Let's add in like a hi-hat, a closed hat, you know, just to, because the name of the game now is like gradually adding in elements to keep the energy progressing and keep the listener interested, because they're not going to want to listen to dun 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 forever. So let's grab, and I'll show you too how this drum rack works. So we'll pick a closed hat from the cymatics folder. This one's nice enough. We go in drums, and we can bring that one into our drum rack here. So now, let's see. So I'm 4 measures in. Let me start adding in this. And now you'll see we have 2 lanes here for our drums. So let's do something like put it on every other 8th note. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, let's do a pattern like this. So it's like every other 8th note, and then the last group has, these are 16th notes, and then the last beat has 2 16ths. And you'll notice again, I made the last 16th note a little quieter just to create some volume differentiation to keep it more groovy. Then we can duplicate this a few times. Say you know, maybe I want to make this second group have an extra 16th note there. And then So now I have like my own little variation here. And I feel like this is an easy way to create interesting patterns. Like do something simple just straight across the board and then add like little variations throughout. And now I have like my own, pattern here that I can reuse. So now that sounds like this. Cool. And why don't we reuse some of this nice reverse reverb that we created? And let's see, we'll put it in here. We'll put it kind of at the halfway point, drag it out. So now we have some additional background texture. So we'll have, the clap reverb will kind of be fading, and then the reverse reverb from the vocal will be coming in. So we're continuously sort of stirring the pot and swirling things around in the listener's ears so it sounds like, interesting, or, we keep the kick and the sub are just there to sort of lay the foundation, but then all the fun, interesting ear candy happens elsewhere. Let's see, so we'd have to... In fact, yeah, we might not even need to play the vocal sample yet, but this vocal hook is going to be the basis of the story we're telling, such that it is. But yeah, let's hear what that sounds like. So... Sorry. Oops, hold on one second. My audio is jacked up. Let's try again. Sorry.
It's really annoying. I don't know why this happens to me.
Yeah, sometimes it's just I'm not using this audio interface as drivers. I'm using a different one so I can have audio running in multiple apps. So the live streaming setup does kind of change things a bit, but and in fact, I'd probably want to put this one in the background too, so it gets the sidechain treatment, right? But that's like a callback to an element we just heard, where we're now extending it a little bit. We're starting to create some familiarity in the listener. We're building a world that they're living in for the duration of the song.
How do you make it on the MIDI clip so that you're adding the closed hi-hats that are coming in later, but then if you're looping the MIDI track, it only loops the part with the hi-hats and not the part without the hi-hats? Like at the beginning, there are no hi-hats, and then the hi-hats come in. Oh, you just have them go out?
Oh, so I have this... these aren't linked to each other.
Oh, okay. I see.
These are like standalone clips, so...
Got it.
Yeah. So now another good element to add at this point, we're sort of a quarter of the way through, or I'll call it quarter so we're not totally confused. This would be a good time to bring in like a clap sound effect, or a clap, or potentially a snare, but I like a clap, to augment our drum beat. So let's find a clap sample that we like. Yeah, that's good enough. So I'll bring that down here. And by the way, I just duplicated this kick and hi-hat pattern that I had going on. So now I'm gonna put the clap on the 2 and the 4. Do that. So now when this goes off, we have this. Now the energy is even higher now. let's see. We might, we might also want to add in some more hi-hats. Let's see, really we kind of need some more background texture to fill in the space. So let's add another vital patch to our list here. So create a new MIDI track. Where did that go? And put it in the background section, and then put vital on that MIDI track, and then turn off oscillator 1 and turn on the sampler, which has a white noise effect by default, or sample by default. Sounds like that. White noise is very crisp and airy and has a lot more high frequency energy than noise that you might find in nature. White noise is pure randomness, but it has a bias towards higher frequencies. So another good option is pink noise. Let's see, where is it? If you go to the left here, pink noise is closer to frequency distributions that you would see in nature. It has a kind of warmer sound to it. So this can be preferable, depending on what you want. Like sometimes you want white noise because you do want that super crispy high end, but for our purposes, let's just try some pink noise. And so let's just draw one long MIDI note, whatever pitch you like. With noise, it doesn't matter. It's like every pitch is the same because noise doesn't really have a pitch to it by default per se. And I think this maybe gets at what you were asking, Storm. Like, how do you draw like one really long bass note, let's say? Mm-hmm. Well, here's how you do it with MIDI. So I'll create a MIDI clip that's like 8 measures long in this case. And then I'll just insert a note here. And then I'll hold my cursor over it so I get that right square bracket and just drag it out all the way. Call this noise. And okay, so now we have something to kind of fill in the space here. It's actually kind of loud, and it's a little bit boring. It's it does fill in the space. It's good filler, but here we can kind of go crazy with the effects. We can turn on some reverb to push it into the background. We can turn on like a flanger, phaser, chorus. And we'll turn the mix of the flanger down a bit. These are effects that kind of create more movement in our back. I don't know why it's wigging out right now. But we turn the mix down a little bit. Now we get like, kind of this more swirling, evolving sort of sound, which will add a little bit of interest to it. I'm gonna bring
to this effect screen.
Hold on. If you open up Vital, you can click Effects up here. Yeah. So I basically put on a bunch of ones that are like, time-based. So just to create a little bit more interest in the noise. What's up?
Why are you using noise and stuff like an instrument? Or is it just like idiomatic to the genre?
Yeah, it's to, like in lo-fi, they'll often use like vinyl crackle sort of sound for the same idea. It's a background element, so it's like when you're painting something and you wouldn't just draw like someone's portrait against a black background. You'd like fill in a landscape or, put them in outer space or something just to kind of give them a context to operate in. And psychoacoustically, it also can help the foreground elements stand out more because you have this like texture in the background. This is also where we could go crazier with the stereo field too. We could put like a delay on here in stereo mode. Sorry, I'm freezing. Where is that thing go? Okay. And then, for these background elements, they can be real subtle. Like, it doesn't have to be loud, just enough to kind of add a little bit more energy in. Let's see. I heard my thing blink. Okay, maybe not. Anything on the live stream? Okay. Cool. So now we're continuing to build up our track. We have the claps in here now. Let's talk about a new symbol we haven't discussed, which is called a ride. It's kind of like a hi-hat, but in terms of how it's used, but it's also sort of like a crash cymbal in that it's like, you could hit it really hard, but usually it's used to kind of keep time. And the common way this is used is we would double it up on every other eighth note. So I think there's a ride symbol that comes with the cymatic samples. Yes. Let's see. These aren't the best. Actually, this one's pretty good. Okay, so we'll take that ride symbol, we'll put it in our drum rack, and now we'll put it on every other eighth note as per usual. This one we won't add any extra like rhythmic elements to it, but so this will help continue building up the energy. It gives us a sound like this. Okay, and now we're at the halfway point in our drop. So we need to do like kind of a bigger turnaround and bring the listener's focus back to our main idea, which is our very profound message that we're trying to leave our listeners with. So we can copy that here. We'll put it right before the drop here at the halfway point. And honestly, we can reuse our reverse reverb yet again. We'll make it even longer this time. Actually, we only need it to be this long, right? Something like this. Cool. But the kick drum is kind of still taking up a bit too much space here. So we want to like a really powerful way to make the audience like beg for it to come back is to take out the bass for a bit. So, and this is going to get into why I said to use the pre-effects side chaining here. So let's go into our drum channel. And the nice thing about the drum rack is that each of these is basically its own little signal chain. So I can put an effect on just the kick drum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the utility and I'm going to put it inside the drum rack next to just the kick drum. And now I'm going to automate the gain so that the kick drum is muted, but it's still sending its signal out. And because I have the sidechain in pre-effects mode, the sidechain is going to hear that kick cymbal, and I'm still going to get the pumping sound, which is important for like the consistency in the listener's mind.
How did you put utility just only next to the kick?
Yeah, so select the kick in your drum rack, take the utility, and don't put it over here. Like, if you get it right, the little placement line should line up inside the drum rack. Not over here, not outside of it, but inside of it. And I'm gonna mute the. I'm gonna right-click the gain, show automation, and I'm gonna mute it for the last 2 measures of this drop here. So I put a node here, a node here. Now I can click down in there, click down in here. So now it's just muted there. And then when the kick comes back in, it's like really powerful. And actually, this is a good place to add. I can even add back this this clap idea I have right before the drop. So put that there too. Make sure the automation is copied, which it is. Great. But now I need so I'm going to need the noise to continue. I'm going to need all these drums I added to continue as well. So duplicate that. And by the way, when you duplicate that, make sure to open up the automation again and delete that the utility bits that we just added. So that way, keep the drums. We keep the kick drum going.
How you added the utility to just the.
Yeah, to add the utility to just the kick drum. So you would select it in the drum rack. You take your utility and you drag it in so that it's like right next to the sampler. There's these like 2 black bars that you can kind of see. If your selector is outside of it, then you're no good. But as long as it's to the left of those, you can kind of see it like jumping slightly as I put it in there. So yeah. Then we're going to drop. And now in the second half of the drop, we're really going to use our vocal sample as a lead instrument. And I know we're out of time here, but I know we started 10 minutes late. So if y'all can stick with me a little bit longer, then we can keep this pushing. Oh, and by the way, another nice element to add is a crash cymbal. This is an appropriate place to put one so that it's like, emphasizes this next half of the drop that we're in. So I'll get a crash. Yeah, okay, this one's good enough. Put that here. Put that crash here. You can usually put a crash on pretty much any downbeat that you want, but if you remember this like powers of 2 idea, saving it for the, every 8 bars or 16 bars or 32, those can be more, those are more emphatic, powerful sort of downbeats and can be emphasized more strongly with a crash symbol or some other kind of symbol. I need my bass line to continue going. Now here I might start, I could increase the energy by changing the bass line in a certain way, or adding more notes there, or changing up the pattern a little bit, maybe adding in a new layer. But what I want to start doing is using this vocal a bit more, so it's more like a lead instrument. So I might do, let's see, hands up, then we're going to drop. Hey. Hey, 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 hey. So let's take an 8th note. So, hey. And that's it. Hey. And I want it to be even shorter, so like a 16th note. Hey, 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 hey. So yeah, something like that. Hey. Hit it, something like that. So this is where we start getting creative. It's like, how do we want to chop up the vocal so it's like an interesting lead element to listen to, and stays interesting. And in the first half of the drop, we haven't really been using the vocal except in this sort of like airy, expansive way. And now we're using it as in a more sort of percussive, attacking sort of way. So we want to create like, an interesting pattern here. And this is starting to get into the even more like taste-oriented considerations. I can't necessarily explain how you do this other than try chopping up different bits of it and thinking of songs you've heard that do something cool with the vocal and try to emulate that. Let's see, hands. Maybe I would do a hand, and maybe I would do it longer the second time. Did it? Hands. And then maybe this third time I would do something like, hands up, then we're going to drop. And then, I'll duplicate that because I want to keep the pattern kind of consistent, but I'll, add more stuff to it over time. So duplicate this, make sure to take out the crash symbol the second time. And I might also start, maybe I'll make the closed hats more frequent. Maybe I'll do like, maybe I'll do, 3/16 notes every time. And now I need to like take the energy up even higher. So maybe I'll make the bass line even faster. Or sorry, not faster, but more notes per measure. So it's like there's more transients coming at you, so there's more like high frequency energy in there. So I'll just duplicate those all the way to the end. And then I'll make the vocal a bit, I'll make it even more filled in. Hands. And maybe I'll make the second one like, I don't know, pitched up 6. And then put that here, I guess. Now I'm running out of time, so I'm trying to be as creative as possible within a limited time frame. But okay, so I'll duplicate that. Now the bass line is pumping even more. And of course we can continue reusing our reverse reverb as much as we like. Duplicate that. Maybe I'll make it half the time, or half as long for the first half of the drop, and then twice as long for the final quarter of the drop. And then another really effective element is something called a riser. So again, we'll get Vital one more time. This will be probably the last thing we add, I think. And take Vital and drag it in here to make a new track. So we actually are going to use the saw wave here. And we're going to automate the pitch. So right now the bend is set to 2, but let's turn it up to 24. This will let us do 2 octaves. We'll be able to raise the pitch of the oscillator by 2 octaves. And we'll put this in the background as well. And we'll again draw out one long note, Control-Shift-M. Now remember how we had our bass note, our sub was an F. So let's also pick an F here so they're in the same key. I think we might have to play around with the octave, but so we'll make one long F. Sure, that sounds good enough. And then there's this other section here called envelopes that you can click in your MIDI clip section. And I think by default, okay, and then down here in the bottom, we'll select the MIDI control option. By default, it's pitch bend. So then we'll create like, we'll create a one long note or one long automation, or this is automation. It's not the same kind of parameter automation we were talking about. We're automating the pitch bend parameter in the synth itself. So that sounds like this. Sorry. So this will give like a sort of rising sense of urgency to the end of the drop, which will cue the listener that, oh, so things are about to, end in some way. And then we might also want to like, give it a little bit of reverb so it's in the background. Because this riser sound, it's not like a super important sound, but it does add extra, urgency, anticipation, pulls the listener's attention a little bit. Yeah, we're sidechaining it. It's in the background elements group, but you'll hear that it adds that extra bit of like, oh, things are picking up. So. Sorry. Two more things. Okay, so here at the right before the halfway point, we took the kick out. Remember? So, and we did that for 2 measures. So here at the end in the second half of the drop, let's take the kick out for 4 measures. So, as you progress further along in a song, you can generally make larger and larger gestures because you've kind of earned them earlier and you've built up more context in the listener's ear. So, we'll again go to the utility that we automated here, and we'll do it for 4 measures this time. And since you mentioned snares, let's add in a snare roll. Oops, there's a bunch of crash cymbals here. Let's take those out. Blue, 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 blue. So let's bring in like a snare drum. Not maybe like let's do that one. Why not? Okay, so bring the snare in here, and we'll add for this last bit, we'll just add a bunch of 16th notes. So we'll draw those across the board. And then we don't want it to just sound like, machine gun. We want to make it kind of rise in volume throughout this last little bit. So we'll again put a utility after that snare, and we'll automate the gain from here to the end. And it's just, again, this is just going to be on the snare, so on that snare roll. So this will give it one other element to kind of cue the listener that this is the end of a section of music. And then here we might put like a, one final crash cymbal just so it doesn't die out. And then here's where you'd have like, an impact sound or some other kind of element to start the next section of the music. But let's put it all together. I think this should sound pretty good.
Hands up, then we gonna drop. Hands
not the best mixing, but hopefully that shows you some techniques for creating like a progression throughout your drop, bringing in new elements, adding in more energy to existing elements, pulling back at key moments. What's up, Anuj?
So would you split the different drum parts onto their own tracks and mix them down or something? Or?
Yeah, you can mix them here in the drum rack as well. Like they each have their own volume sliders, so you can bring in a reference track and adjust the elements in your mix so that they're the same reference track. Usually I do since I have the full version, I'll usually separate things out onto their own tracks because it can be easier to manage. But this is a way you can get around you can easily get around the track limitation in the light versions. Your home play for the next 2 days is to, take these ideas and make a drop of your own, ideally 32 bars, ideally using some kind of cool, fun vocal sample. On Wednesday, we're going to introduce a little bit of music theory and make it more, make the drop more melodic and talk about like chords and melodies and stuff. But this shows you how far you can take things without needing any like advanced music theory. It's all timbre, sound programming, effects, drums. We use like one note this whole time, so it can be that simple, and a track can still murder the dance floor even with very few music theory elements. So, any last questions before we adjourn? All right. Can't wait to hear what y'all cook up over the next 2 days.
Thanks, David.
And if you don't have time, also, no worries. We're just here to have fun.
Snare roll was very hard to spot in the.
Yeah, I mixed. I didn't. It shouldn't be this low. Maybe I should bring it up to -6. And there's also some probably the noise is a little too loud, and probably the ride cymbal is a little too loud too. Let's see. Is that better? What were you gonna say?
When you're introducing a new drum, do you typically have the velocity at 100, or I feel like mine always defaults to 127?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
it honestly doesn't matter too much when you're using drum rack or simpler, because the tone of the drum doesn't change with the velocity, just the volume. Mm-hmm. So you can always turn up the volume here.
Okay.
In fact, I try to do as little volume manipulation as possible in the MIDI velocity, except for
like a single note
within the pattern. Like I'm not using MIDI velocity as a mixing knob. I'm using the track volume or the volume of the sampler. Yeah. But if I want it, you can also, for instance, I could have done this snare roll. I could have ramped it like this. So this is a totally valid technique.
Oh, okay.
Instead of using the
utility.
The utility, yeah. And some samples are more complex, and when you play lighter notes, with a really good piano sample, the lighter notes will have fewer high frequencies. They'll be softer, or like a bowed violin.
Yeah.
If you strike it really hard, it tends to excite this instrument in a way that changes the timbre and the frequency distribution a little bit.
Okay, and in that case, you would use the one volume over the other, or?
Yeah, because like a 127 on a really good piano sample might sound too in your face and bright and sharp. So I might use a lower velocity so it's a little more muted.
So it's for drone stuff, the velocity is not 1-to-1 with volume.
Say it again.
For like something that has like a tune or a tone, then like velocity is not the same as volume. Because the way I'm thinking about velocity for like a drum thing is like how loud it is, but maybe that doesn't translate well for like the piano sound.
Well, again, it kind of depends on on the sampler instrument itself and how many samples each instrument has per velocity. But for the simpler, which is what this instrument is called, there's none of that. It's just like, but if you were doing like little ghost notes, like I would set the velocity to like 64 for the ghost notes, and then the main hits would be 127. But yeah, I would like. I used to go in and set everything to 127, but right now it just defaults to 100, and that's fine.
Okay.
All that matters
I was
is.
wondering if mine defaults to 127. I don't know why. But,
Yeah.
I guess it's not that big of a deal. It's more like.
Yeah, because there's other ways of like mixing it to the appropriate level.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. I got a little lost at the end, but I'll watch the.
Sure thing.